Welcome to the Jason Hedrick Show. This is round 3. Congrats, Major and Kurt, for 3 of these.
Thank
A lot of effort into this one. Kurt, you agree?
you. A little bit.
A little, yes. We don't have a mic for him. We don't even have a mic for everybody. That's how much effort we're going into this. And Kurt, let me say this about myself. I'm not a go-getter and a hustler. I'm very lazy. That's for real. I think people think I joke around about that. I'm very lazy. So just to round up people and to get 5 people, 6 people to come together to do this is way more work than I'm used to. So the first couple guys I had lined up, we just couldn't iron out the time, and that's fine. And then I got these guys lined up, and then my main man Kurt here backed out on me a couple days ago, and then took some heat at home and sucked it up. And he's here, so we want to say thanks to Kurt, because I swear to God we couldn't do it without him.
Thank you, Kurt.
We could do this without everybody but Kurt. You're with me. You can't pop off from over there. You have to pop off right here.
Got it.
Okay. So Major and me are sharing a mic, just so you guys know. Okay, my guests are 2 guys I work with. That is how I know them. I only bring it up for that reason. I don't want to get too much into tying this into anything with work at all. It has nothing to do with my work, but we do all know each other from work. They're both actually my bosses. Brian was my boss when I first got hired there. He's still my boss in a different way. Jimmy, were you part-time when you got hired?
Yeah.
Part-time?
Right.
And we were buddies from day one, and then when I left for a while and came back, you're almost running the place.
Close.
Yeah. So anyway, that's Jimmy. Anything else you would like to tell us about yourself?
You guys talk about all the time where you started politically. I'm just like you guys. Started out.
That's a topic, so don't be giving anything away in your introductions. That is a whole topic of that transition.
All right. We'll talk about that later.
And I'll get into it more, but the reason I wanted you to has very much to do with that transition of kind of all of us. So anyway.
Right on.
Married. How many years?
14.
14 kids?
3 kids, 22, 16, and 11.
All right.
So,
and you came all the way from Fresno.
Clovis.
Clovis.
Pay that higher real estate tax to say Fresno. Clovis.
Yeah. You are a liberal.
Limousine.
Brian, tell us about yourself.
Married, 2 kids, 7 and 4. Just getting used to the whole parenthood thing and loving life.
How many years do you think it's going to take you to get used to it? 4?
Should be good at 20.
20? About 20 years?
Yeah.
Okay. That's it for my guests on their introductions. I'm just going to do what we normally do, jump into it. Little just trivia so everybody can get some background stuff. I like to start with Major. It's the same type of game we played last time. If you name a correct answer, it passes the next guy until you can't name a correct answer. So we're starting with Major. Name a Trump cabinet member that we know is under investigation or we pretty much are sure is under investigation.
Flynn?
Over here.
Flynn?
Yeah, I'll accept that.
I thought you said current cabinet member here.
That counts. He was in there. He got kicked out.
Took my answer then.
Come on, there's way more. Right, Jimmy.
Jeff Sessions.
Yes. Major.
Nunez?
No, just for being a douchebag, but not really.
He wishes he was in the cabinet.
You have any? We'll let you back in a bonus round. We would have accepted Carter Page, Manafort, Sessions, Flynn.
Pages. What's his position?
There's
He's
another
not a
guy
cabinet
too.
Member.
He was advising their team.
You said cabinet members, man.
I said you knew what I meant. I just wanted to expose how ridiculous they were. Anyway, we're going to get into the political stuff in probably the last segment. We're going to start with something. This was my thinking on this. A lot of times I try to bring in guests that can counter. Big difference in my voice. I apologize for not being up on the mic. A lot of times I bring in guests that try to balance the show, and I've done that on the first couple shows. I thought this segment would be interesting because I have a feeling those of you that are religious and very religious think that people that aren't religious sit around and bite bats' heads off and sacrifice things when we talk about you. So all of these people, and I don't think I'm divulging anything that's not kind of public, aren't very religious. Correct, Jimmy?
Correct.
Brian?
Very correct.
Let me. I thought about this too. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the least, 10 being the most, I'll start with myself, and this might surprise people, but I'd say I'm a 3. religiously. I think people would think I'm lower than that, but I'd say I'm a 3.
And you're including spirituality.
Just kind of spirituality. So what about you?
Honestly, I'd still like 1.5.
Yeah, okay. Jimmy?
I'm very logical.
1 would be
you're
pushing
down
it.
there. Major?
I'd be pushing it, yeah.
Maybe 5,
Yeah.
6.
Yeah, I figured you were kind of in the middle up there. I'm with you. I think I'm a little lower than 5 or 6, but I think I'm more spiritual than people might think I am because I am not as religious as they would like me to be. But that's the topic that I wanted to bring up first is maybe people that are religious that think that people that aren't religious, when they talk about them, I just think we can give them a little insight. If not to make fun of them,
Right.
but in a real way. Like from people that are good people, that have kids, that have a family, that have real jobs, that aren't religious. I'd like to discuss some of the things that actually impact us and some of the things that bother us about religion and things we have to live with religion. Knowing full well that we have nobody here religiously to represent that, but that's kind of the point of that.
Right.
Because it's not counterbalanced. So anybody have any thoughts on that? Want me to lead off on something that affects us?
I wouldn't mind
Brian?
starting there because honestly, I don't have I don't have a problem with religion as such. You know what I mean? I think to each his own, and if that's what helps you get through the day, great on you. You know what I mean? Good for you. The problem with it is that all major religions seem to have that, move forth and conquer attitude. It's spreading their religion. It's in your face, spreading their religion, and then wanting me, who is not part of their religion, to kind of obey their tenets and the rules that they want to put forth. And that's kind of what America is supposed to be, is this big melting pot where, as in public, as a public domain, that stuff doesn't matter.
But just besides not liking that they're spreading it, I understand your point. Does it impact you in a negative way, other than just you don't like it? Are there real consequences that you feel the effect
and this
of?
is a political show, and I have, my mind's on politics at the time. So I mean, politically, that would be one of my biggest problems, because honestly, in my everyday life, I mean, I don't give a crap what religion you are. It makes no difference to me in my life. But when you start trying to legislate because of your religion, what you believe, that's when it becomes a problem for me, and I have a real hard time with that.
What specifically have they legislated that's based on religion that affects you? Jimmy, anything? We can come back. Think about it.
Yeah,
you don't even have to answer that question, but
Right.
just your thoughts on where we're at.
Similar to Brian, I don't worry about them pushing it on me so much. I don't hide my non-belief. Clovis is a very religious city, so we are the outliers up there. But I've never had anyone try and push what they believe on my kids or me. So I don't hate religion. I understand the fear of, especially the evangelical politicians, towards Brian's point a little bit. I understand the fear for those of us that are non-believers, that the more powerful they become, the legislation is only a matter of time. It's not an if, it's a when. So that concerns me a little bit, but I don't lose sleep over it, and I don't, again,
Right.
It doesn't bother me who you believe in.
Is specifically Christianity, only because that's where we live and not necessarily picking on any one denomination.
Right.
I just think because of where we live, I mean, that's obviously the religion we deal with. Do you feel they have more power or less power legislatively?
It depends on what we're talking about. State by state, it differs. Obviously, California, not
Right,
as
but I mean,
much.
just as far as they're wanting to spread religion and the message, do you feel they're gaining traction on their desire, or you think they're losing traction?
I'd maybe spinning their wheels a bit. I don't know if it's going.
What do you think they think?
I'm sure that they think they're losing.
Right,
traction.
exactly.
I mean, the war on Christianity in their eyes is a real thing.
So why do they feel that way?
Because they've never been challenged before.
So just recently, 5-10 years?
Yeah. It's in America, Christians been what we are, the way to be, and it just felt like a guarantee, and it was kind of a large brainwash, I think. and some people finally started standing up to policies and what they didn't want in public schools and in public life, and Christians in this country had no pushback for the history of this country. And in the last 10 years, it's there, and that tiny bit of pushback by 15% of the population that doesn't believe was of enough of a challenge to really send the movement over the edge. And it's a movement that doesn't need to happen. It was 70% of this country identifies as Christianity or as Christians. Probably 10% of them are true ones that follow the doctrine.
Right, and just to interrupt you, as we share mics and I lean in on you, again, the insight into a conversation of people that aren't religious talking about religious people, and I'm very aware that that's what we're doing, but I'm trying to share insight. Like, so when you say something like, we as people that aren't religious and aren't Christian, that's how we feel. We feel like they are kind of it's hypocrisy at its extreme. And it's not that I have any animosity towards a religion. It's not that I think one's better than the other. I'm very on board with the messages in almost all of them about love. I'm very on board specifically with Jesus's message as well. I know you are, Major. It's we don't believe that they really believe that. And that's what we think about them. I mean, do you guys feel the same way? I mean, like he said, 10% of them he feels believe. I don't, obviously we're making those numbers
Right.
up, but I mean,
Yes, that's
that's kind of what we think. I mean,
Yes.
they don't like us. I don't want to say they don't like us, but they fear us. They want to change us. And we look at them and just don't even believe they are what they are.
Right.
And they don't see that. Any thoughts on that? Brian?
It's always tricky when you're, how Christian are you? And I think there is a
Well,
fairly-
when you commit a crime, then you're not Christian anymore.
Right.
That's the rule,
then
right?
you're a lone wolf.
Yeah. But if you're a Muslim, then you represent all Muslims. Anyway, go ahead.
I mean, how Christian are you is just a tough thing to be doing. So I don't try to judge anybody in their religion. I think a lot of people, I'd hate to put a percentage on it, but give kind of lip service. And I think that's what you're talking about to being, yes, am I Christian? Are you Christian? Yes, I'm Christian. But, you mean, do you go to church or do you think about God or do you pray? I mean, that kind of stuff. And what makes you Christian? I have trouble with that. And, hey, if somebody says they're Christian, good for you. So much of it for me is just
even
when does
Barack
it get in
Obama?
my face.
Jimmy?
Well, I was just going to touch on what Major said about the group of non-believers that have a voice now. I've known since I was young that I was an atheist. I never believed. But I would always say I was agnostic. Oh, I don't know. Maybe there is something. When I knew that I believe there is nothing, I knew that there's nothing. Only the last probably 5, 6, 7 years have I been open and say, no, I'm an atheist. And like the stuff that you're trying to push on me or that you want me to do based on what you believe, that's not okay. Like, I'm not okay with that. I don't care that you do it, but me and my family are going to do that on our choice, not because you're telling me to.
Brian?
Slightly off topic, but agnostic, atheist. What's the real difference there in how you describe yourself? Because honestly, when people ask me, I mean, technically, I think I'm agnostic. I think all religions are kind of out there. I mean, I hate to say nuts, but
I wasn't going to get here,
opinion,
and I'm very proud of myself how I let this go every time it comes up, and I think we might even have had this agnostic atheist thing come up in every one of these podcasts. I mean, it's a pet peeve of mine. I usually let it go, but I mean, they're two different words. They mean two different things. Exactly. One has to do with knowledge, and one has to do with belief. So everybody is agnostic. None of us have knowledge. Now, I have met people full well, Christians, that just absolutely know for sure God exists. But they just believe that they know God exists. They don't have knowledge God exists, even the miracles that they can point out in their life. So everybody in my mind is agnostic, unless God has just literally came down and just whatever, touched you. But not in the way that they say God touched you, and not the way their priests touch their pastor boys and all that stuff. So they're agnostic to me is you just don't have knowledge. And theism has to do with your belief in a deity. So that's just a whole different thing. Do you believe in it? To me, Do you talk to it? Do you think it affects your life? Do you pray to it? I mean, if you do that, then you are a theist. If you don't do that, you are an atheist. That's the simple definition of that for me. Gnosticism has nothing to do with that, so I always hate that. I get that one's kind of a euphemism for the other.
Right.
So
That's more what I was pointing out than anything else. But yeah.
Major's always doing something on the side. So, any last thoughts on religion? Before we wrap that up, I just want to say because Jimmy, Major always makes our guests laugh. You said that you never were religious, and so it was just a matter of when you more came out and voiced it when you felt like it was affecting you. Brian, you never were religious either, were you?
No, I think both my parents would tell me they were Christian. I think my mom later in life, once she got very sick, became very, very Christian for a while there.
Was she in prison?
Not in prison.
Okay.
No, not physical. But yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
You religious at one point? Would you say you were a believer, Major, at one point?
Yes.
Now you're not.
Yeah. Well, yes. Now I'm not like I was.
So they didn't have, and I think I'm more along the lines you are, and that's why. So just and the reason I want to hit on this is because people that are religious always feel like something went wrong if you were a believer and now you're not. Now these guys just weren't brought up in it, never believed. But I'm like you. My parents would probably say they're religious or Christian. I don't see much of that going on in our household. I started going to church. I recruited my friends. I was very, very much a believer, head of Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Just at some point in my life, it just stopped making sense. There was no big moment for me. So for you, as a person that still says you're kind of a 5, how did you abandon one thing but still land where you land?
I don't know. I think.
Thank you very much.
I remember at one point being frustrated that I was buying into something that you were told to believe, not because you bought into it, but because you didn't want to go to hell. I just thought that was a crappy premise, and that's what got my mind going. So I figured, if I'm going to believe, it's not going to be based on a fear of hell. Like you said, I like the doctrine and the philosophies of Christ. You know, if people could follow that, things would be different. Christ did say, sell all your belongings and give the money to the poor and follow me. That's where I said, fuck that.
Okay, you've almost already got us into this topic, Jimmy, but the reason that I wanted you two guys here, I can remember we were watching a debate, correct? Were you there?
2008.
Yeah, and I really didn't even hardly know you at that time. We went over to Brian's house to watch a debate, and
one of the first debates too.
Yeah.
Like
There
that
was
was
still, like, 10
I
guys up
think
there.
that was debate number
It
one.
might have been.
So nobody was on Obama yet. Actually, I know I was on Biden at the time.
But let's just. I had never voted for a Democrat at that time.
Correct.
You either?
Nope.
Brian,
I had, yes.
who'd you vote for?
I'm trying to think here. Well, let's see. Well, no, Nader, and no, in 2004 I voted for Kerry.
So I was under the impression that you had been a Republican.
I was raised Republican, so my dad is super right wing. When I went to live with my uncle, he listened to Rush Limbaugh while we were picking in the fields and stuff. So for 6 hours a day, I got to listen to Rush Limbaugh. So I was indoctrinated into the right wing, I would say.
But I mean, you believed listening to Rush Limbaugh was cool. Like
it made sense to me at the time. Absolutely.
Yeah. When I was driving around the sheriff's department in my deputy uniform, Rush made a lot of sense to me too. I mean, he really did. I mean, it was cool listening to him. Like, it's weird.
And he did change over the years too. He got I'm talking back in the 80s, so late 80s. So I think he has gotten a little bit more shock jock over the years. So I think that has something to do with it as well.
Jimmy, and you voted for a Democrat the first time in 2008.
2012.
So
I voted for John McCain.
And then somewhere along the next 4 years, that was the first time you did vote for a Democrat.
Correct. Yeah. I almost did in 2008. But I don't think I wanted to accept. I didn't want to accept in my own mind that I was going to vote for. I wasn't ready to vote Democrat yet, even though I think I was already leaning that way. I still went Republican because that's all I ever voted, and that's all I ever knew.
And so that's what this segment's really about is, so how do you describe yourself now? If somebody just for you, like if somebody said, what are you?
A libertarian, a liberal libertarian.
But do you think that most libertarians vote for Obama?
No.
So libertarians wouldn't really call you a libertarian, would they?
I'm a classic libertarian, not the libertarian of today, like the Freedom Caucus the ones that basically hijacked the Libertarian Party. I think a classic libertarian, but I don't know. I don't consider myself a Democrat. I'm not registered a Democrat. I feel like I'm a lot left of where I used to be, but I think if I was where I'm at now 15 years ago, I wouldn't seem that left because of the shift of the Republican Party.
Fair, and I understand your point, but the reality is we are where we are.
Yeah.
So what are you? I mean,
I'm liberal.
You're right.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But isn't that kind of what? I mean, when it comes down to watching news, when it comes down to voting, when it comes down to policies, don't you seem to agree with them more?
Yeah, I do.
I mean, I get you. It's as a person that's not been a Democrat.
Right.
I've always said I'm not a Democrat. They irritate me. I don't think they govern very well.
They don't. They're weak and they don't govern well at all.
Yeah, and I wouldn't call myself a Democrat and join their party, but for
You're
some
right.
reason they've came around to.
Right. Every issue, you're right. Every issue that comes down, 95% of it, I'm gonna agree with them.
Right. So I mean, are we still old school Republicans and they've abandoned us, or?
That's what we tell ourselves.
And Major, I feel like you're kind of the same as me and Jimmy. Like your transition a little bit.
Yes, I think you pay a little bit more attention to politics than me, even though I do dabble. But I'm somewhere in the middle.
But your transition, did at one point would you feel like you were a Republican?
I was a conservative Republican, and then I went and got my master's degree in public administration back in 2003, right around the start of the Iraq War. And I got into school. I got into Fresno State, which isn't a liberal institution, though a lot of people say all colleges are liberal. But I just started studying actual policy. I studied the 9/11 Commission report. We didn't have these liberal instructors so much as we were just presented cases and outcomes from policies that were created. And I realized that the Republican Party was really good at pushing their agenda and making me as a member feel like they were always right. And that was about the time we weren't finding weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and I realized they're full of shit.
Right?
Well, I would consider myself independent at this time, but I think most people that know me or talk politics with me would call me Democrat or liberal. I don't consider myself such, but I think that the political spectrum has moved.
Okay, and just interrupt you. So, what don't you think is liberal about you? Like, so when they say that, and I totally agree with your assessment that, but I think out of all of us, you've gone the most to the left, but just your history, you started a little more left than we did. So that's not as extreme as you didn't start in the same place we did. You voted for Kerry. He was 8 years behind you.
Right.
So I mean, there's
and I'm sorry. This is a story I like to tell because the moment that I really started changing, I started becoming politically aware, and wow, am I really part of the Republican Party? Was Bill Clinton and the whole blowjob scandal, and honestly, that super turned me off. I was just like, what the fuck is this? Why is this so important? What's going on? The whole Ken Starr thing, and it got to the point where I'm barely paying attention, and it's like, what the F is going on? And that's really when I started to leave the Republican Party, and that's why in 2000 when I voted for Nader, because neither party sounded good to me, and I'm of that opinion that we need more parties. And you know what I mean? If we had 3 or 4 or 5 viable parties, I think that would be a much more interesting political landscape that could create much better results. But that's not where we're at, obviously.
Yeah, just to kind of put a bow on mine, 2012 was the first time I voted Democrat, but I didn't vote Democrat in the 2016 election.
And fair enough, but you would have if you'd have needed to.
Correct.
Right.
I would have.
Yeah. So I mean, I get you.
Living in California,
I think we're a lot alike.
Being
Like
in California allowed me.
it's hard to it's hard to identify with them, and you don't want to own them. And I'm with you, but at the same time, you're just giving yourself that little peace of mind that you didn't, but you would have. If you needed to, you would have, and so would have I. I voted for Clinton. Not a Clinton fan. Wasn't hugely disappointed that she lost. Wasn't flipping out about it. Knowing what I know now, we'll get into that in the next topic. I mean, not super happy, but you know, and again, we'll get into that in the next topic. I think that's why he won. Besides, I mean, if I had to narrow it down to the most simplistic thing that I could, people wanted to vote for him. People didn't really. More people wanted to go vote for him. I know that sounds really stupid because that's how a vote works. But more people wanted to go vote for him than wanted to go for her. She still had more votes. That's the argument. But I mean, the people that wanted to vote for him. But anyway, that's the point that I just wanted to get to is, and maybe you guys could touch on this and then we'll wrap it up on this subject. But is it us? Are we getting older? Are we in our 40s? You're in your 40s, Jimmy?
Not yet.
Almost. The young baby here. The young baby. The rest of us are. Is it us? Is it them? Don't give me it's both. I mean, have the parties really switched? Has the Republican Party really switched? Or have we really switched? That's really what I want to know.
Well, I don't think it's a switch. I think the Republican Party has gone to a strange place. It's not like gosh, I don't know. You know, I don't know my older politics very very well. But at one point, the Democratic and the Republican parties did switch on a lot of topics. You know, on a lot of things, they actually switched positions over time.
Lincoln's always been a Republican.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think that's the case here. I think that they've gone to the right so hard over the last 20 years that it has just changed the landscape. And that's why I don't feel that my top politics have moved very much, but I feel like the political landscape has moved a huge amount.
I mean, everybody's shaking their heads here. I feel the exact same way that you feel, but I guess what I'm saying is the reality of it is that's not what the people that control that party think. That's not the people that I mean, so
I would challenge that.
And we could challenge, fair enough, and that's what we're doing, but I guess what I'm trying to hone in on is, does it just feel good to us to say it's them? Or is it just we're not the parties do have an ebb and flow to them, and I get your point that they didn't switch. This isn't the huge switch it was after the civil rights movements, things like that. This is just they've gone more extreme.
Karl Rove.
I totally get your point, but that's just the ebb and flow of a party. The left has done some things too. Maybe I can't think of any off the hand because I'm living through this. But again, you can agree or disagree. But is it them or is it us? That's really what I want to know.
For me, I feel the same way that Brian does. I don't think ideologically I've changed a lot in my life. I feel that the Republican Party has. Karl Rove, like Brian said, the evangelical rise within the party, it pushed them a lot more right than where I was or where I ever wanted to go. So is it a little bit of me? Yeah, maybe as I'm getting older and I realize it's not all about me all the time and being selfish. You know, helping other people. You know, my wife and kids are comfortable. We live a good life. So what if I pay my
I hate to interrupt, but how could you want to help other people when you've already admitted you're not religious?
That's the only way, right? Yeah, because the book tells me to. Yeah.
Okay.
Just going back to sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, just going back to that, just the fact that a lot of people really do think that you know, the religious people, they look at an atheist or somebody, you know, who doesn't believe in their religion and just, oh, that poor person. God, they need to know how to be a good person. And you know, that's not what I need to be a good person, you know, and I've got other things that kind of guide me.
Yeah, I hear you. And we're back on subject one, but I hear you. I would say that's my biggest pet peeve with them, besides all the things you guys, it's just that they just look at me and can't believe that I would want to do anything good. And that's just such an insult.
It is.
It's such an insult.
Right.
They did that part. I mean, so here, back to subject one. You wanted to know what inside talk is from people that aren't religious. I mean, just the insult. Like, if I went and knocked on your door and tried to jam something down your throat, you would see it for what it's worth. If I
We should start knocking on people's doors, spreading scientific facts.
I think somebody's already pulled that stud. We'll just stick with our Halloween pranks. Newman. Okay, I want to wrap this up. Still talking about Trump and where we are, but a real thing that's going on is the Russia investigation. So before we get into specific details or talk about that, for you, the same way we answered the other question on a 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest, how really truly concerned are you? 1 to 10, Jimmy, about just the whole Russia as far as it ties in specifically, and I'm not just talking about the elections, even though you can incorporate that in your answer if you want, but I mean specifically to the Trump administration going forward. Is this a real concern of yours? 1 to 10.
6.
Brian.
It's hard to go with the way you framed that, honestly.
Go ahead, do what you need.
Is it concerning to me? Yes. Now, do I think Russia has control of Trump? Do I think it's concerning in that way? No, I don't. I don't think it's like that. But do I think it's concerning that something like this could happen during our election process? That is alarming to me on a 9 or a 10 scale. Do I think that Putin has control of Trump? No, I think that's a 1 or a 2 on a scale of 1 to 10. So it's different.
With this representing a president that might feel he's above the law, it's an 11. As far as the actual topic, for me, probably a 5.
Yeah, and I'm going to weigh in, kind of to elaborate on where you were going with it. Like, do I think that Trump is a Russian spy working for them, trying to do good stuff for Russia? No, I don't. I mean, this might seem condescending, and perhaps it very well is, but I mean, I just don't think he's very bright. I give him the benefit of the doubt that he's fully well-intentioned, even if he's crooked as hell, even if he's just corrupt. I still give the guy the benefit of the doubt.
This is just how he does business.
Yeah, I give the guy the benefit of the doubt that he's trying. Like, that he thinks he's trying to do well by us. I give him that benefit of the doubt. I mean, I think that's cool of me. I know people that don't do that. They think he's evil and crooked, and everybody that does. I mean, I'm not like that.
Nope, just dumb.
Yeah, I feel like he's just in. But, so I'm even willing to make that concession and try to find some middle ground, but just even saying he's dumb is offensive to them, because Trump supporters don't see him as dumb. They quite the opposite. They think he's very bright. So
he's a billionaire.
And but it ties in this whole theme that we've got going on of where's the party? Where are we? How do we fix it? It's just like, where are we? That this percentage of our population really truly believes this guy's smart. He can't even talk in sentences. I'm not even trying to be funny. Right. He's our fucking president, and he can't talk in sentences. And it's just that doesn't bother people is what bothers me. It's not even bothersome that he can't talk in sentences. As long as everybody said, wow, this is fucking crazy, our president can't talk in sentences, and we all agreed that we were watching our president not talk in sentences, I could swallow that pill.
Right.
It's just that we don't agree on that. So where are we?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to ignorance. Our politics are more complicated than they've ever been in the history of the world. And I think, of course, you know what I mean? As we progress, our politics become more advanced and more hard to keep track of. But our population has not kept up with that. So what's happening is we have this exponential ignorance factor going on. And I mean, I consider myself fairly well informed. I watch the news way too much. But yet there's a million topics that I'm not nearly as informed. I know a little bit about a lot of topics, but there's so many topics that you can go so in depth to that people just don't know. And so the pervading ignorance and then the complication of politics it's a nasty combination.
And this is where I've been, and anybody that knows me well can tell you I've been here for 20 years now. I 100% agree with you, especially I love your word exponential, because that's exactly how it works. It's just, that's the math of it all. It's just, in without saying it any other way, it's just, it's going to, the ignorance is going to outbreed the knowledge, and that's common sense. That's the way it works. So here's the question that I've always had for 20 years, and I've never got a sufficient answer. And I've asked you this, Brian, so anybody can answer this. If you claim the side of the smart people and the other people are ignorant, is the word that we've used, then I think the burden's on the smart people to bridge the gap instead of just point the finger at the ignorant people. I don't know how to close that gap, and I have yet to have anybody answer that. But do you agree that the burden's not just, hey, you guys are dumb, quit being dumb?
Well, I think that in part helped Trump get elected, because you had all the smart elite liberals telling, anyone that's Republican, telling them that they are an idiot and that you're ignorant and that you're a deplorable. That really affected them, and they took that personally and said, "You think I'm an idiot?"
Yes,
okay, that's
and again, I know I interrupt you guys, agreeing with you guys, but if it was a poor choice of words, we could forgive it. But the reality is deplorable was a perfectly fine word, because that's how it described a lot of people.
Right.
So it wasn't that they took it wrong. It was meant that way.
No, I know it was.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is, so I know I interrupted you, but it's not that they took it wrong.
No, it was meant to.
Yeah, we say you're deplorable. So again, if you're on the side of the smart people, is that how you bridge the gap? Now, if you listen to for sure. If you watch any of my silly videos, if you follow me, I'm sure people think I call them stupid all the time. So I'm as guilty of this as anybody. But isn't it silly? Don't we have to?
Yes, we have to be
the
better.
burden's on us to not call them stupid.
We have to be better.
Yeah.
And we have to somehow
we have
figure
to
out a way
con them the way they were conned, in a nice and loving way, and do it for them.
Yes, because if you tell them they're stupid, like we've been telling them, they're going to shut you out, shut down, and fuck you.
Yeah, we just and I don't know how we do it, but we have to appease them, Brian.
I just at the time you were talking about the deplorable comment, and it's just that thing has gotten taken so out of context, because when she was talking about the deplorables, she was talking about the racists that he's been baiting to come out and help with this with his election and that kind of thing. So she was really talking about the people that most of society would consider deplorable, not speaking about Republicans in general.
Not disagreeing with your point at all, only making the point that they didn't take it wrong. That was the only point I was interrupting him about.
Well, but they did. They did. She's not talking about the common Republican being deplorable.
She was saying people that support this, the rest of us think you're deplorable. If you're on board with this stuff.
But when she was saying that, she was being a little more specific. She was talking about the outer outskirts.
I get it, but I think the rest of us, it wasn't a poor choice of words. The word was fine. We do think that's deplorable activity. We do think that's a deplorable way to think. It disgusts us that they want to treat other people that way, that they want to pick on them the way they do, and make their lives miserable, and make laws against them. We think it's deplorable. So again, my only point is I don't think they took it wrong. We do think that's a deplorable. It's not that we just disagree.
Those things, not all of them.
You don't like public education. You think it should be private, and we need vouchers or whatever. I don't think you're evil. I might disagree with you, and we have policy differences. But whatever. That's a policy difference. But that's not how we deal with things anymore. It's you think that, well, you're deplorable, and I do think that. So again, I'm just like anybody. This is where we ended. I don't know, but I just think that is the spot we are. Like we claim the high ground and we don't take the high ground. And I'm just as guilty as anybody. But how do we switch it? What do we do?
Obama was so good at that. I just taking the high ground, and we need another candidate that can come in and just speak to people's hopes, and not to what's wrong with the other side. If we can get another candidate like that, I think things will be interesting.
And I just when your solutions, you talk of candidates and of media and stuff, and I think it's at a way more personal level.
I see what you're saying, but those are the tools that we have access to.
I get you, but I just think that, those things we have to do it on a personal level. Somehow we have to close the gap.
Well, and just me in my own life, I have taken that on at some level. The people that I feel that I can reach, or maybe put a little light on things for them. Especially when it comes to election time, I really do. You know what I mean? I don't get in people's faces. I don't. But I the people that want to know.
Well,
I try to inform them.
Well, I'm very confident in what I am and what I believe in that will interest people. Not just me specifically, but just the confidence in anybody of what they believe that. Because other people aren't confident in certain things, in anything. If they're just not confident, then they'll gravitate towards confidence. So, yeah, I'll have those discussions too during that time. But I mean, I was beating the Trump drum and saying, sounding the alarms more than anybody I know, and trying not to be one of those guys. I know I am to some people. I get it, but I'm trying not to be one of those.
You can be when you get in the mood.
No. At any given moment, I'm one of those guys. Absolutely, no denying that. I just meant I don't want to be one of those guys on Facebook that nut job that just regurgitates that shit. I wasn't, I definitely railed as hard against that guy as I could in my mind without trying to be that nut job. So all I'm saying is I just think it's too late, even a year out. I mean, and I think that's why we do things like this. To have these discussions, to see that we're all just regular people, that we don't hate you, that we talked about things that like not being religious or whatever, all the differences that we have, just to try to bridge that gap. I mean, again, it's a quest of mine for 20 years. I don't know how to close that gap.
Well, something I read not too long ago, I've been trying to practice, and I think there needs to be more of it. When you get in these discussions with a person with a polar of your ideology, and they're complaining, in politics, a conservative has a complaint. What we're all conditioned to do is you hear the complaint and then you take away all the merit and immediately tell them that they're wrong. But what you need to do is when people are complaining about something that frustrates them and impacts their life, you need to listen for the points they are actually making. And then when you respond, you sit there and tell them, that's a good point. You're right there. That does suck. What do you think about this? And now they come into the conversation feeling like you're listening. You're not trying to put them down. And I've been trying to practice that. A lot of times I just go to 10 and do the, where you insult them and then they leave me alone. So that works for me as well. But yeah, it starts with listening to the other side.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like you said, the tool of finding that common ground. And again, the character of me on Facebook or that, but I mean, the me in real life, that's definitely one of my talents. I mean, I am just, there are people I deal with on a daily basis that are on the other end of the spectrum as me, and I will just gravitate towards whatever it is we have in common, because that's the only way we're going to be able to get along in that environment. So I just think there's got to be more of that. Anyway, we've gone on a little over an hour on this. I cannot thank you guys enough for coming, and you guys had to do an extra long sound test today. We don't know how it's going to turn out. We thought we honed in a little better the second time. We were disappointed the third time you saw the sound test that we had to do, so we just won't know until it gets out. We're trying. I mean, I always feel bad for my guest if we just don't have the sound quality, because this was fun. I know it's cool having these discussions, and it just sucks if we can't get the sound the way we want to, but we're trying. We're trying, and to the rest of you, we're trying. If any of you would want to be a guest, if you want to come hang out when we do this, or there's things you want us to talk about, whatever, someday we'll get this all totally the standard we want. We're still 3 shows in. We're super amateur, but we're having a good time, and I can't thank all these guys enough, and especially my main man, Kurt, for clutching up today, and always Major for always being here and being courteous and gracious to give us his house. And thank you, and see you next time.